Thank you for 5-7 into Virginia, 73, QRZ, Whiskey 1, Delta, Echo Delta.
Today I'm very excited to welcome my first international guest, Iliyas Campbell. MM0MMN is joining me from Scotland. It's 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here, and I think it's noontime there in Scotland. Welcome.
Yeah, good morning, Kevin. Thanks for being up so early. It is just afternoon here, so it's not so bad for us here.
Yeah, as I've told you earlier, I'm on my fifth cup of coffee, so either I'm going to be over-caffeinated or I'll be on the ball, one or the other. But thank you for joining me. I've worked Iliyas twice on 20 meters. The first time was pretty exciting for me. I was activating a park in Maine, and frankly, I had been ready to close up that activation for 10 or 15 minutes, and I heard Iliyas come in with his MM0MMN call, and it just was a good reminder that keep that radio on for a few more minutes because it was, in my opinion, the most important contact of my day. The second contact was with Iliyas in a park, actually a twofer in Scotland. And I'll let him get into the details, but I believe it was on the Isle of Harris, the Outer Hebrides in Scotland, and it was a really exciting contact for me. Tell us about that particular activation, if you remembered, Iliyas.
Yeah, I remember that one. That was a twofer. It was Golf Mike 149 and 169, I think. 149, just got a couple of notes here, is the North Harris Mountains, and 169 covers South Lewis, Harris, and Uist. Those are all the islands in the sort of chain of the Outer Hebrides. So if you look at the map of Scotland, there's a sort of chain of islands down the northwest side. That's all of those. So that twofer, it was up the side of the mountain. The mountain's called the Clisham. It's about 650 something meters high. I was about 400 meters up in the car. It was a cold day. I wasn't going to be going too far. It was a bit windy as well. Most of the storms that hit you guys on your East Coast travel across the Atlantic, and they catch us as well. So, there through the winter, sort of 70, 80 mile an hour winds is just part of living. But I think it was blowing about 50 to 60 that day. It wasn't great, but it was nice to be out and just get the activation done. It was a pretty busy one. I was surprised to hear you come through. You were one of the first few that I logged that day. And I was really surprised to get you at the US so early in the day.
Well, when I was looking at the map, it looks like it must be a challenge to get there. What's involved with actually getting to that activation point?
Well, my home is in central Scotland. I'm in not far from the place, Gleneagles. From here to get up there, that was about a 3.5-hour drive to the ferry from the port of Ullapool. From there, you get a ferry. It takes about 2.5 hours to the town of Stornoway. That's actually where I'm originally from. So, I have a home base up there, my parents' house, that I can stay there. And I spent, at that time, I was there maybe for about 3-4 weeks. And then the drive down to those two sites is about another sort of 40-minute drive. It's not too far away from the home. But then getting in between the little islands, you've got smaller size ferries that sort of shuttle you back and forth through the day. And they run pretty well. Obviously, they will stop if the weather kind of doesn't allow, just for safety. But that's how we get up there. You can fly as well, but I tend to drive up, take all my gear with me as much as I can, and operate while I'm up there.
Well, that's still a significant commitment. It's certainly not the 20-minute drive to a park that a lot of hams in the U.S. experience. And actually, you're somewhat of a kindred spirit with myself because I'm here in Maine, and as I've said in earlier interviews, I'm at a point now where I'm driving 2, 3, or 4 hours to get to some of the unactivated parks in Maine. So thank you for your commitment. Tell me about how you got involved with Parks in the Air initially.
Well, my first activation was on the 6th of April, 2021. And that was a park just literally 15 minutes away from home. I had never heard of Parks in the Air before, but I was sitting at home. The radio was on one evening, and I started hearing a few US stations calling Parks on the Air. I had no idea what it was. I knew what Summits on the Air was. That's quite popular here, but I'd never heard of Parks on the Air. And a lot of people at that point hadn't here as well. I looked it up, checked it out on the website. I got registered. And a couple of days later, I went out to, it was Golf Mike 0133, the Lomond Hills Park. You can get quite high up there, and you get a good look over all of central Scotland. So it's pretty easy to get contacts from there, even on VHF. And that was my first one. So since then, I've done 245 activations. 244 were okay. The one that didn't count, I just wasn't watching the clock, and it went past midnight UTC. I logged 2 contacts. So yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, anyway, they got the credit for it, and that's fine. So I've done 169 unique parks, and in Scotland I've only got 20 left to finish the whole country. But they're going to be more difficult to get to up in the Northern Islands of Orkneys and Shetlands. And there's 2 off the Hebrides, St Kilda and another one, Suliscare, which is about 15 miles north of the Hebrides in the Atlantic. It's basically just 2 rocks. There's nothing out there. I don't think I'll get to those anytime soon. Not that I couldn't, but the problem is that there's avian flu up around there at the moment, so any travel to those kind of areas is banned presently.
One of the things I noticed, Iliyas, when I was looking at the Parks on the Air map, it looks like you've been the first activator, the only activator at many of these parks. Is that correct?
There have been a few others, particularly down the sort of borders areas in central Scotland. There's a few other people have been active with Parks on the Air here. Yeah, but not many. Most of the parks, I think I'm the only one that's been to them in Scotland.
So
England, it's a little bit different. Down there, there's more people activating there at the moment, and people like 2 Echo Zero HPI gets around a lot of the parks. I think he snuck across the border one day and did like a couple of Scottish ones as well, but we let him off for that.
So I presume, as you said, that there's just not a lot of people activating, but I presume also it's because of the remote locations. It's as you've said, it's a commitment for you to get to them. It would be even a more substantial commitment for others that don't have that base in Stonaway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, because most of the population's down around the sort of central belt on the borders, it's easier for them to get to those parks. When you start looking up into the Highlands and the islands, it's quite sparsely populated, and then you have to consider the sort of percentage of that population that actually operate on ham radio, which is really, really very small. When I do go up to the islands, if I get on VHF, you're speaking to maybe the same 4 or 5 people each day. So that tells you the sort of numbers that are up there. It's not many at all. And yeah, those guys didn't know about Parks in the Air either. So yeah, I mean, it's easy for me to do the islands. I can do the Highlands because it's kind of on the way. And some of my work and travel around the country helps me to just get about. And, if I'm going to somewhere new for work or for a meeting or something, I'll tend to leave a couple of hours early. And if I can hit a park on the way or on the way back, I'll do that. But not everybody's got that sort of luxury. They work. A lot of people these days working from home, or work is not very far from the cities or whatever. So they're more kind of constrained with what they can do. And on top of that, everybody's got family life going on as well.
So tell me about the gear that you take with you when you're making these trips. What do you throw in the car for a POTA activation?
Well, I'm an ICOM kind of guy. So I have the 7300, which I'll stick in a box. That comes along, and my 705 is in the car all the time anyway. I'll tend to use the 7300 most of the time, and I'll tend to use that on about 50 watts. I use a 12 volt LifePo battery with it, and that usually lasts me that 4 or 5 hour activations easily, or even a couple of them, and that's a 20 amp hour battery. The antennas, I've got a few. I've got a Chameleon MPass 2, which I use as a ground-mounted vertical, like a 17-foot whip. I put 4 ground sort of counterpoise on it. That's the one I'll tend to use the most because it's so easy to set it up. Literally a couple of minutes, the antenna's up and you're operating. And it's the same when you're closing down, which is great here because the weather can literally change in a heartbeat. People ask, what's the weather going to be like this month or that month when you come to Scotland? You need to expect every form of weather within an hour. In the middle of August, you can have sunshine, you can have rain, snow, and winds all in an hour. And that's August. So wintertime is pretty much the same. You just have to be ready for anything. And the one thing you don't want to be doing is having to take down a mast and wires and everything else when it starts thundering down on top of you. So yeah, that's the one I'll use the most. But I've also got a homemade doublet that I'll put up on a mast sometimes if I'm going to be there for a little bit longer. Or if it's a park that I'm actually staying in or camping in, something like that. And that's the 2 sort of main antennas that I use. On the VHF side, I don't do so much, unless I'm near one of the cities where you can guarantee getting some contacts. And for that, I've got a homemade 5-element Yagi. or the vertical whip on the car. The Yagi looks a bit rough and ready. It's actually a broken fishing rod pole, and I've used some Flex 10 coax on it rather than aluminium or anything else because it was something I had lying about at the time. I chopped it up. It stays fairly rigid. It looks terrible, but it does a great job.
I've used the Chameleon also. That was my first Parks on the Air antenna, and I love the versatility, the fact that I could be set up and operating within literally minutes and also break it down, move on to another park, just take it out of the back of the car. So I totally relate to that being a great Parks on the Air choice. You know, one of the things I love about your activations, Iliyas, is your Instagram feed, actually. It's so fun to be able to go to your Instagram feed and see the photos that you post. Obviously, you're blessed to live in a beautiful country with beautiful vistas. But I've got to say, your photography and your videography is first rate. Is that another hobby of yours?
The drone work certainly is. I have a business here that operates with drones. We do filming, inspections, and various other things with them. So anytime I'm out with a car, the radios will be in the car, and there's always a drone in the car as well, just in case there's something worth capturing. So when I'm on the activations, as long as the weather is allowing it, I'll get the camera out, I'll get the drone out, and make a little bit of a clip now and again. It's a little bit restrictive in some areas, but yeah, whenever I can, I'll do it. I'm certainly not professional at it, but yeah.
I appreciate the videography, and please keep going. It seems professional to me. One of the things I've noticed in your photos is a dirt bike. Do you take your motorbike to some of the activations?
Yeah, occasionally I will. Yeah, I actually started doing that at home just to get a bit more VHF because I'm not set up in the house for VHF. So I'll jump on the dirt bike. I basically go out the back gate of the house, and the hill behind the house goes up about another 200 meters. So I'll just ride to the top of the hill and do a bit of work from there. It's also a SOTA summit, so that kind of helps. So yeah, I'll get up there. I'll do some of the SOTA work. I'll activate on some of the VHF contests here and that kind of thing. So yeah, where it's possible, I'll bring it. Part of the problem here is that you're not really allowed to ride off-road unless you've got permission from the landowner. So a lot of places are closed for it. But yeah, where possible, I do bring it just to get away from the roads and the tracks and get somewhere a little bit more remote.
So speaking of your home QTH, you mentioned you live near Gleneagles. I know you do obviously a lot of portable operation. Do you also have a home station? Do you make contacts from that?
I do, yeah. I do some hunting from home. I work from home at the moment most of the time, so that's a bit of a blessing. And on my desk, I literally have my work computer and the 7300 ICOM sat right next to it. And on one screen, I've got the POTA app open all the time. So anything pops up which is reachable, work pauses for a moment, and I'll start hunting a few parks. Yeah, certainly the last few months, most of the operating I've done from home has actually been hunting parks. Yeah, the setup at home is pretty simple. It's a 7300, and I'm running that through a doublet, which is about 80 meters long, fed with ladder line, about 50, 60 meters of ladder line.
So obviously Parks on the Air has made a huge push to add additional parks around the world. Are you seeing that increased activity on your end?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there's a few more activating in Scotland these days. Definitely a lot more in England. And certainly from the hunting side of it, it's very, very busy. You've got people here who, and I'm sure it's probably the same there, regulars in your logbook every time you get out and activate. Golf Zero, Romeo Quebec Lima, Don, I think everybody's probably heard him by now. There's all the Spanish stations, Echo Alpha 1, Alpha Foxtrot, Fox India Charlie, the French stations, Foxtrot 4, Lima Hotel, John Baptiste. There's so many of them activating now. You're regularly getting pile-ups of people just hunting the parks. And, from when I started until now, yeah, I would say it's very, very much busier now when you're getting on and you're doing the park. In the beginning, nobody really knew what it was, certainly within Scotland and England. On the continent, maybe not so much that way, but yeah, definitely a lot busier now. And I think the way they've been pushing it forward and they've just made it so easy to use the system. When you get online and uploading your logs and everything else, it's all automatic. All you have to really do is focus on getting yourself out, activate the park, come back in, upload your log, and the whole thing is done.
Iliyas, tell me how you got started in ham radio.
My first jump into radio was back in 1980. Must have been 83 or 84. I was a teenager. I was on 11 meters SSB. It was actually legal at the time here. So I was kind of hiding in the attic or the loft in my parents' home. And I had a couple of radios. I had a NATO 2000 multiband. And I had the Ham International Concorde 2. So they were both pushing out about maybe 12 watts, something like that, I think it was. And the antenna, the antenna was an old K40, the mobile antenna, and it was mounted on a biscuit tin in the attic, and I had some wires running off it. I don't know if they made any difference or not, but at that time we were quite on a high spot for the sun cycle, and I was working the world from that little set with that daft-looking antenna sitting on a biscuit tin. So then. From there, I went to the military not long after that, so I couldn't get licensed when I was overseas. So I didn't actually get licensed until, it must have been August 2020, by the time I'd come back to the UK, because I was living abroad for a very long time. August 2020, I finally got licensed with a foundation, and then went through what we have here, which is an intermediate, then the full exam, about 6 months later after that.
And you've always been active?
Yeah, from then, definitely, yeah. Pretty much almost every day I'm on the radio if I can be, either in the house or in the car. They're always switched on. And if there's something interesting going on, I'll certainly tune into it and see if I can work it.
So you also are building some lodging on your home property.
That's right, yeah. Well, when we've had this property for nearly 3 years now, since we moved back to Scotland. And there's about 16 acres, and about 6 of that is a sort of paddock area, which isn't really getting used. We bring the estate's Highland cattle and the sheep and whatever in to control the grass. But this year we're planning on putting some sort of glamping pods on it, sort of small wooden cabins. They sort of sleep 2 to 4 people. So yeah, we've got plans to put sort of 4 of those in at one end of the property. Yeah.
I think you could be on the cutting edge of Parks on the Air travel. You could be encouraging people from the U.S. to travel to Scotland, and you could be their Parks on the Air guide for the week. What do you think?
Oh yeah,
I may be your first client.
Work, yeah. Yeah, you're welcome anytime. If you're the first one in, you won't be paying. That's for sure. But there's a lot of travel around here. Most of the travel around here is tourism and for the golf. The golf either at Gleneagles or less than an hour away at St Andrews.
Well, I'm going to put you on my list eventually if I can just talk my wife into making the trip.
Welcome anytime.
So I know you do a lot of international travel. Are you able to put your radio gear on the plane and take it with you, or have you done any activations in other countries?
I haven't, yeah. I mean, since I've been licensed, I haven't been traveling so much because of all of the lockdowns and everything that's been going on. But I do have 2 trips coming up. I've got one next week to Jakarta. And I'm just trying to figure out the intricacies of it there. I know I can operate there, but I'm not sure about bringing the gear. And I don't want to get to the airport there and, spend an hour with customs trying to figure out what we're going to do next. So, yeah, I'll need to figure that one out. But I know a few people there that can work that out for me. Then in January, I'll be coming across to Toronto. I'll be there again for about a week or so. These are work trips, but I do try and work a little bit of free time into them. And, certainly at those... Toronto, definitely I'll be getting out and doing some of the parks around there, and getting a few in the log. Because, like we're saying here in Scotland, I'm starting to run out of them. It's getting a bit harder to reach them. But yeah, certainly on the travel side of things, as things start to pick up now and I'm doing a bit more travel, I'll be putting something in the bag, whatever it is, even if it's just a handheld, and getting out and operating.
Well, I'll be definitely looking for you. If people are looking to pick up Scotland through Parks on the Air, when could they expect to hear you? Are you primarily on the weekends, weekdays? What does your schedule look like, or is there any regularity to it?
I'm fairly flexible, really. It can be weekdays or weekends. At the moment, most of my activations are sort of between 10 and sort of 1600 UTC. So it's a little bit early for some folks over on your side. But I do get a few regulars that do call in from sort of the East Coast and Canada there at that time in the morning. So yeah, that's the usual time. I mean, you will find others. I think Mike Zero Tango Quebec Stewart. He tends to operate, I think, a little bit later in the day down in England. But certainly for myself in Scotland, that's when I'm on the most. Particularly now because the light draws in pretty quickly. It's dark here by I guess 4:30, so 16:30 UTC. It's already dark here at this time of year, and so that kind of limits. And the cold as well. That kind of limits how long you're out there for.
Well, Iliyas, I appreciate you joining me today, and appreciate you taking time out of your day. And I think you've actually skipped your lunch for this.
Well, I might have skipped lunch, but have you even had breakfast?
I haven't. just the 5 cups of coffee, but I'm going to get on that soon. But thank you for joining me. I've been talking to Iliyas Campbell, Mike Zero, Mike November. You can find him on the POTA spotting page. You might hear him in Jakarta, maybe in Toronto. And if you want to make that POTA travel trip, you should give him a call. Thank you, Iliyas.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everybody, and happy hunting. 7-3.
One Delta Echo Delta.
Kilo Delta 4 Whiskey India.
Kilo Delta 4 Whiskey India 5x9 at Kilo 8291.
Roger. Got you 57 Virginia Victor Alpha this morning.
Thank you for 57 into Virginia 73 QRZ Whiskey 1 Delta Echo Delta.